Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, it is KingNido here and we are coming to you from Olivine City where the steel type carbons are hosting the Cortundo dust mites and the bug types have a huge task against the steel types here today who have those 10 resistances plus 1 immunity. But you have to think whoever wins this game will move themselves into an Elite 4 position, so let us know who you think will win. Will it be the steel types? Will it be the bug types? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
As I said though, the steel types have those 10 immunities, as it will be Sizzle, a steel type in fact, and Arbeliever starting out for the Cortundo dust mites. It is Orthworm and Copperaja starting out for the Olivine carbons, and immediately the terrestrial Pokemon Arbeliever is going to change its grass normal typing into a bug type, and it takes that spectacular form with that crown upon its head. But we'll see if that spectacularness can contribute to this matchup, as the Drain Punch is not very effective from Orthworm onto Arbeliever, and immediately that Seed Sower ability is activated, so grassy terrain will take effect over the battlefield, and we get a Volt Switch immediately onto Copperaja from Sizzle, who is going to go back to the bench. It's still in this matchup, and out comes Heracross, who has that fighting type, but we get the Ember super effective onto Copperaja. That is a very powerful looking Ember as well, and a Gravity from Copperaja. This is going to cause that gravity to intensify. Do not expect to see a bounce on this battlefield or anybody flying up in the air. Heracross going for its first move of the matchup, and an Electro Ball onto Copperaja. Seems like Copperaja is currently a target for the Cortundo dust mites, as in response we get the Vine Whip, which isn't very effective onto Heracross from Orthworm. With the response of a Mega Horn now, it will get that stab typing boost onto Copperaja, yet again taking more damage. Not very effective, but a good hit there from Arbeliever, and a Teleport now from Copperaja. Sick of taking all this damage, it does vanish from the field, and out in its place comes Tinkaton, the Steel Fairy type Pokemon, as that grassy terrain takes effect on the field. So this is going to restore the health of anyone who's taken any damage, and we get a nasty plot now from Tinkaton. This is going to boost its special attack. Now Tinkaton does have only a base 70 special attack. It's more specially defensive, as that Growl will lower the attack stat of both Tinkaton and Orthworm from Heracross. It needs to capitalize on its fighting typing there, as a Dig now coming from Orthworm, burying its way into the ground, and that is exactly what you would expect from an Orthworm, as Arbeliever sets up the Toxic Spikes on the side of the Olivine carbons, and they do not care whatsoever. They are not going to be affected by poison type moves throughout this matchup, as that grassy terrain still taking effect that commenced with that Seed Sower ability. And now we get the Energy Ball onto Heracross. Not very effective, but gets a good hit, does Tinkaton. Heracross does respond with the Spore. This is going to put the Part Fairy type Pokemon to sleep on the field. Now both these sides have had 5 wins this season, as that Dig is not very effective onto Heracross, but as I said, 5 wins so far this season. Both of them looking for their 6th, should more than likely get them into the Elite Four, especially the Steel types. The Bug types, if they win by at least 2 Pokemon, they will definitely move up into the Elite Four, as well as 3 hits onto Tinkaton from that multi-hit move from Arbeliever. And there's that grassy terrain still taking effect, as Tinkaton is still fast asleep after taking that damage, so it's not going to go for a move this turn. This allows Heracross to go for the Tri Attack onto Orthworm. Not very effective, little bit of damage being done there, and Orthworm does respond with the Leech Life onto Arbeliever. It is going to restore a little bit of that health that it just lost, but it doesn't do much damage there to Arbeliever, who responds with the Thunder Punch, yet again going for the sleeping Tinkaton. Seems that they're not too worried about Orthworm on the field at the moment, and there is that grassy terrain healing health for everybody now. Even gets Orthworm back to full strength, as the gravity does return to normal, and that grassy terrain does disappear from the field, but Tinkaton is still fast asleep, so it is unaware of what is going on around it. And Heracross with the Fire Spin, this will be super effective under Tinkaton, and it's going to get trapped in that Fiery Vortex, so it will be taking more damage from the Fire Spin as this matchup goes on. But the Charge Beam now onto Heracross from Orthworm, who gets the special attack boost. They really are not worried about Orthworm on the field at the moment, and we get the Quiver Dance from Arbeliever. Is going to boost its special attack, and it's got that base 125 special attack, as well as boosting its speed and special defense in the process. And there is that Fire Spin doing some decent damage to Tinkaton, who finally awakes on the field, and immediately going with the Psych Up. Doesn't go on the offensive, instead it copies those stat changes that Arbeliever just did, boosting those special stats and that speed And the Shadow Force Heracross vanishes from the field instantly. That was a good play by Tinkaton, by the way, but I believe it now with the Axe Kick onto Orthworm. Super effective, and it is going to leave Orthworm confused, so it might actually do some damage to itself. Seems that the Kotondo Dust Mites have finally shifted their focus. But we've been in this matchup for almost 5 minutes, and we are still yet to have an elimination, but now we get the Torch Song onto Arboliva. Super effective. Doesn't do as much damage as I expected, but does boost that special attack of Orthworm. And yet again, Arboliva's Seed Sower ability does get activated. So yet again, the grassy terrain takes effect on the field, and this is going to restore that health throughout this match. This is a very methodical matchup so far between these two sides. No one is doing any huge damage to each other yet, as Tinkaton with the payback onto Arboliva. Little bit of damage to the Bug-type Pokemon there, and here comes the Shadow Force from Heracross onto Orthworm. Gets a really good hit there. Orthworm holding on though. Arboliva could finish it off, but instead sets up the spikes. Now this will actually do damage to whoever comes out onto the field for the Olivine Carpets. So you have to think when Copperajah returns to the field, it will land in them and take some damage, as Orthworm needs to shake off this confusion. It is successful, and it goes with the Fire Fang onto Heracross. Super effective, doesn't do as much damage as I was expecting, and this will allow everyone yet again to restore their health from that grassy terrain. And still, we are yet to see an elimination in this matchup, as Tinkaton feels the effects of that Fire Spin still. And it does go with the Clear Smog now onto Heracross, who holds on, has all of its stat changes eliminated, and responds with the Harden, so it is going to boost its defense. I don't see boosting its defense now doing too much, because it is such an easy target being in carry range, and now we get a defense boost for Arboliva, boosting its defense with the Withdraw though. Orthworm is confused, has the potential to do damage to itself, and that it does, but it is only going to do a tiny bit of damage in the process. And yet again, that grassy terrain still taking effect, which has actually probably kept some of the Pokemon so far in this matchup, because if without having their health restored as it has been doing, they would have surely been eliminated by now. And yet we still are yet to have an elimination, and the Confuse Ray now from Tinkaton onto Arboliva could run the risk of Arboliva doing damage to itself, similar to what Orthworm just did. And I cannot believe the bug types are really holding their own here. And the Fire Punch onto Tinkaton is super effective, and the first elimination from this match has taken place, being done by a Heracross. A really great elimination there. Arboliva could follow it up here, but it needs to shake off this confusion first. It is successful in shaking off the confusion and puts the bind onto Orthworm. Doesn't do much damage, but it is going to do continuous passive damage, which is very important, as Orthworm snaps out of its own confusion, and it goes with the Ingrain. So not only will it restore its health with the grassy terrain, that Ingrain planting its roots in the ground is going to restore even more health, and then it's going to be offset by the bind. This is a very methodically paced matchup, whereas I could have imagined the Steel types coming in and just trying to obliterate the bug types, but that has not happened at all. The bug types have really been holding their own this season. They've only had 4 losses, as Copperajah comes back out on the field and immediately lands in the spikes, but it holds on only just. Heracross could finish it off, goes for the payback, instead goes for Orthworm. Orthworm's holding on as well. Arboliva has the potential to finish off either of these Steel-type Pokemon. It is confused though, so it does damage to itself, unfortunately, and this opens the window for Orthworm, who goes with the Powder Snow, hitting both Heracross and Arboliva. Critical hit on Arboliva, and Heracross holds on, but it is frozen. How are these Pokemon still hanging on by just little threads? Copperajah with the liquidation though, going for Arboliva. Arboliva hangs on as well. If anybody takes any damage in this matchup, they're surely going to be eliminated at this rate. But everybody now having their health restored, that grassy terrain coming into play yet again. Now, the Olivine Carbons have only lost 3 games so far this season, and that is because they've already had their bye. This is only their 9th game of the season. This is the 10th game for the Kotondo Dust Mites. They will have their bye later on in the season as the grassy terrain disappears from the field. Heracross immediately thaws out, and it goes with the Gunk Shot, which will not affect either Copperajah or Orthworm. The Steel types are immune to poison type attacks, and that's why they didn't. Copperajah was not poisoned when it came back out onto the field. We get the Spite now from Arboliva. So the bug types did not go for any easy eliminations. Orthworm did have its PP drop though, and responds with the Acrobatics on the Heracross, and Heracross is eliminated with that super effective move. There is only 1 Pokemon eliminated from both sides so far in this matchup, and a very intelligent soft boiled from Copperajah is going to restore some much needed health and get some huge health restoration. That and there are the roots restoring the health of Orthworm, but that bind trying to offset the effects of that and could potentially eliminate it in the coming turn. And now, back onto the field comes Scizor. And we are back at the original 4 Pokemon who started off this matchup as Arboliva, unable to shake off its confusion, does damage to itself, but hangs on. Scizor trying to make up for it, goes with the Absorb and eliminates Orthworm from this matchup with the not very effective hit. The Cortana Dustmites have taken back the lead, but Copperajah could change that, going with the lunge onto Scizor, taking its first damage of the matchup, and it's been in the match since the beginning. Out comes Forretress for the Olivine Carbons, immediately taking damage from those spikes, and Arboliva is snapped out of its confusion at a very crucial time, and it goes with the Shore Up, so now it's going to be restoring health, similar to what Copperajah did. They are really doing their best to keep themselves in this matchup, as the Encore from Scizor does unfortunately fail. This opens the window though for Forretress to go with the Stone Edge onto Arboliva, and doesn't matter that Arboliva restored its health because that super effective move has eliminated, but before it leaves, that Seed Sower ability gets activated for the 3rd time in this matchup, so we will continue to see that grassy terrain restoring health on the field. Copperajah with the Water Spout going for Scizor, all by itself would have done damage to Arboliva as well, but it was eliminated, so Scizor takes the only hit, does have its health restored, as will Forretress and Copperajah, and Forretress has had an impressive showing over the last few games. See if it can repeat it here again today, as Slitherwing comes out for the Cortondo Dustmites, and immediately with the Acrobatics onto Forretress. Forretress tanks that hit. Scizor follows it up though with the Hammer Arm, super effective onto Copperajah. Copperajah hangs on though, of course it does. Scizor loves its speed to do that. And Forretress responds with the Brick Break onto Slitherwing. Not very effective are the fighting type moves onto the bug types. But there we get the Power Whip follow-up, also not very effective onto Slitherwing, but actually gets a decent hit there. But there is that grassy terrain yet again, still restoring health. Everyone's holding on. Copperajah surely would have been eliminated by now, and Slitherwing going with the Inferno. It's going to ensure that Copperajah is eliminated with that super effective move, and yet again the Cortondo Dustmites are back in front by 1 Pokemon. Forretress though responds with the Dream Eater, which won't affect Scizor because it is not asleep. That is the only time that will work, allowing Scizor to respond with the Whirlwind. This will immediately send Forretress back to the bench, and out comes Corviknight in its place, but Forretress will be then coming back out onto the field shortly. The smart play with that though is Forretress doesn't get its health restored by the grassy terrain, and it lands in the spikes for the 2nd time in this matchup, as we get our first time warning, and we haven't even had half the Pokemon in this matchup eliminated, as the Thunderfang onto Forretress from Slitherwing, and the Baton Pass from Corviknight. It's going back to the bench. It's had an impressive season so far as well, so they clearly want to keep it in for this match. Now comes Iron Treads onto the field, and it does land in those spikes. Forretress does go with the Heat Wave. This will be super effective on Slitherwing, and gets a massive hit, eliminating Scizor with that super effective quad damage move. Leveling the playing field 3-3. This is the point where you want to get those eliminations, because if we go into overtime, and it really looks like we are, it will become a singles battle between the remaining Pokemon, as out comes Kleavor for the Cortondo Dustmites. A wrap set up by Iron Treads onto Slitherwing. This will be doing passive damage, which could potentially eliminate Slitherwing, and Kleavor going with the Draining Kiss onto Forretress. But as I said, if we go into overtime, it will become a singles matchup between any remaining Pokemon. And a Focus Blast onto Forretress. Forretress is eliminated by that massive move from Slitherwing. That 135 base attack coming into play for the Bug Fighting type. So there will only be 2 Pokemon now left for the Olivine Carbons, and yet again the Cortondo Dustmites have taken back the lead. As I said though, we go into overtime. Any remaining Pokemon restored to full strength, and it will become a singles battle as we get the Acrobatics onto Kleavor from Iron Treads. Kleavor is going to respond with the Disable, but it fails unfortunately. We are in the countdown point of this matchup. The Rising Voltage from Slitherwing doesn't affect Iron Treads. It should have gone for Corviknight to capitalize on its part flying type, and Corviknight's going to respond with the Sandsear Storm. Little damage to Slitherwing, not very effective, and also hits Kleavor in the process. Slitherwing taking more damage from that wrap. They need to get Iron Treads off this field to keep Slitherwing in this matchup. Acupressure from Iron Treads is going to boost that defensive Corviknight though. Kleavor needs to go for Iron Treads, goes with the Ice Beam onto Corviknight. Great hit, but doesn't do enough. Slitherwing follows it up with the Meteor Mash. Not very effective on the Flying Steel type. Slithering does have an attack boost, but that will not come into play in overtime. And the Sludge Wave will not affect Iron Treads from Corviknight, but it hits both Kleavor and Slithering. It eliminates Slithering. We are going to find out who the last Pokemon for the Cortondo Dust Mites is before we go into overtime, and it is Scyther. But we do go into overtime now. It will be a singles battle between these 4 Pokemon. So we'll start off with Kleavor and Corviknight, both at full strength. All their stats reset. See what they can bring. Kleavor going with the Flash Cannon now onto Corviknight. Not very effective though. Corviknight is going to respond with the Horn Drill, and it is a one-hit KO. A one-hit wonder. That is how you start overtime. And for the first time in this matchup, the Olivine Carbons are in the lead. Scyther comes out onto the field and immediately goes with the Ice Shard, trying to capitalize on that part flying typing. Chipping away at Corviknight here. Corviknight responds by vanishing instantly with the Shadow Force. Scyther now going for what would have been a super effective flamethrower. Corviknight's able to avoid that attack and finish off the Phantom Force. Gets a good hit there on Scyther. Scyther needs to respond with something big, and it goes for the Cross Poison, but it won't affect Corviknight. It's immune to the Poison type move, which opens the door for the Steel type Pokemon to go with the Heavy Slam, landing hard on Scyther there. Scyther needs to go for another Flamethrower, instead goes for another Poison type move. This is terrible for the Cortondo Dust Mites, but opens the door for the Carbons. The Roar is going to fail because there's no bench for Scyther to go back to. This allows Scyther to go for a Liquidation onto Corviknight. Yet another good hit. They need to do more damage to get Corviknight off this field though and level the playing field, but the Bug Bite onto Scyther, not very effective from Corviknight there, but it does take its Leopard Bearer. I do not see anyone using up all of their PP in this matchup though. Maybe it's just trying to intimidate it. Scyther does respond though with the Pollen Puff. This won't be very effective. Even with the Stab Boost, not very effective on the Flying Steel type, who responds with the Echoed Voice. Little damage done to Scyther there. This opens the door for Scyther to go for a Sand Tomb, but Corviknight is also immune to ground type attacks because it's part Flying type. And Corviknight responds with the Payday, trying to earn its money here, but Scyther holds on and goes for the Stored Power. Very minimal damage to Corviknight, and Corviknight is going to go with the Boom Burst, and the Olivine Carbons have won this matchup. Very methodical by both sides, very back and forth. The Cortondo Dust Mites really holding their own against the Olivine Carbons, but it was not enough. And this will move the Steel types up into 4th place, as next round they will be taking on the last place Glossato Nordics. Whereas the Bug types stay in 8th place, and next round they will be taking on the Lumiose Glitches. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below who you thought was the best on field. And if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more important, always remember, you are awesome. And I'll see you when you see me.